What are you doing? Get out of the video. Last video, we looked at what constitutes a basic function. In this video, we're going to complicate things just a little bit by adding a few vocabulary words and revisiting another concept that we learned last week in order to complicate our understanding of functions. From the last video, you're going to recognize this function. It's the productive version of the meow function. Now, I bring this back up to illustrate an important point about the flow of control or control of flow, depending on which way you've heard it before, if you have. We're not disrespecting it. It's still happening the same way. When we run this program using the Python command in our terminal, it still reads the program left to right, top to bottom. Instead, though, it reads this function and onboards it as a function called meow to be used later once we've called it. When we get down to that first line, message gets the value of the meow function. The minute we see that meow function, Python interpreter is going to call the function, actually jump up to the definition, run the instructions there, and then return to the end of that line where it left off once it's done whatever it's done. Printed to the screen, in this case, return the value meow to become the value of message. And then it's going to continue on to the next line and finish out the rest of the program. Of course, we've seen this. It prints meow to the screen because my last instruction is to print the value of the message variable. Now, I said that things were going to get complicated, and only a little bit more so, but complication you shall have. We're going to let the words parameter and argument enter the conversation now, because sometimes you want to be able to provide data to a function for it to operate on or do something with, instead of just leaving it blank like we did with the previous meow function. So in this part of the video, we're going to redefine the meow function to use a parameter, and we're going to pass an argument to it. So I start my function the same way, the def keyword, always the def keyword, and then give myself the name meow, spelling it right, of course. And inside my parentheses this time, I'm not going to leave them blank. I'm going to type name here. And what I'm actually doing is creating a variable that only exists inside this function, but we call this a parameter. So if I were talking about this particular function, I would say meow is a function that accepts one parameter. And what I'm going to do with that is the non-productive thing. I'm just going to print name says meow, though we all know who says meow, of course. It's the person I'm trying to keep out of this room, because otherwise he will commandeer the video. But to use this, I have my parameter. I need to provide it a value. And this is where I pass it what is called an argument. Now, when you see this, the distinction may seem slight, but using the correct vocabulary will make it easier for TLs, myself, anyone in the future that you're working on code with to help you. So in order to pass that argument, I have to do it at the function call level. So if I call meow here, I can provide it a string that allows me to populate that name parameter. So I'm sending that value to the function. And if I shift enter, you notice that in the function, it replaces name, the parameter accepted, with the name that I provided as an argument. Now, of course, I'm going to complicate it further. Like, we know that that's just what I'm going to do. So what if, for example, we wanted to have two parameters? What would we do then? Well, still start the function with the def keyword, name our function, and provide an extra parameter offset by a comma. So this allows me to now say that meow is a function that accepts two parameters, one called name and one called message, that allow me to manipulate them. And if I just want to print again what I am sending its way, I can say that name says now message. And if I need to pass those two parameters, so if I have a function that takes two parameters, I need to provide an equal number of arguments. So I'm going to use meow again, provide Ulysses, of course, who's going to come when I say his name out loud, and the message that Ulysses says, which is meow. So when I shift enter here, I notice that I get kind of what I expected. The two arguments that I passed, both as strings, the name and the message, populate. And you can do this for pretty much an infinite number of parameters. Some functions take many parameters, some functions only take one, and some do in fact take none. However, it's always the same. We're always going to use the def keyword, name the function, give the parameters split by a comma, and then end it with a colon and do everything that we learned in the previous video. So it's not really all that different. We're just sort of filling in a couple of gaps that we haven't seen before. So this video answered a couple of questions that you probably didn't know you had, but are important nonetheless. Parameters and arguments allow us to dedicate functions to specific kinds of functionality, like we'll see on Monday and Wednesday, and of course in our lab as well. In addition, we questioned a little bit about the flow of control, which doesn't actually change too much about what we know about it. It's still respecting the flow of control, but it becomes important when we use multiple functions in a given program like we will in the lab this week. The next video is going to push our assumptions and our implicit understandings just a bit further to accommodate a little bit more about functions.